to be in front of you one more time before I move on to Oakland. So I just want to say before I start that thank you for everything. I can't look at these people. No, really, my dad, this is my dad's first time hearing me preach. Dad, you can raise your hand. He looks a lot like me. He deserves a lot of hand clapping because he is a great man. For real, he is an amazing person. He has been sober how many years now? 13 years. And yes. I know he's in AA and I just outed you in front of everybody. Sorry about that. But he speaks a lot, so you can YouTube him, it's fine. But he's an amazing man, and he has really been a source of inspiration for me in a lot of ways. He's taught me what forgiveness looks like. He's taught me what honesty looks like, what integrity looks like. It is really because of my dad and a lot of reasons that I am here today in this capacity, and part of why I am so grateful to be able to go into ordained ministry eventually. So thank you, Dad. And I could say many more things about all the other people that he is in the same row with. So thank you all. I'm graduating with my M.Div tomorrow. Yes. It's been a long 4 years, most of them good, some of them difficult. There's been a lot of mountains and a lot of valleys in those 4 years. And I'm grateful for each of you for helping me through all of that. This community has been incredible from the first moment I walked in the door. I came here for the first time with Rourke O'Donnell. Some of you might know him. Yeah, he and I were supposed to start seminary together, but I took an extra year because I got hired with MCC to work on our conferences and events. And so we came here during our Wesley weekend to visit the campus to see what we thought about it. And when we came in, everyone was just completely welcoming. It was great. And Rourke started that fall, and within the first month of classes, he had a deadly seizure, and he passed away. And he wanted to become a chaplain. That's why he was in seminary. So every time I come here, I think about him, and I think about sharing service with him and his mom for the first time, and just what a bright light he was, and so full of hope and possibility for our world. And so whenever I am here, I think about him, and I invite you to keep his memory alive. There's a chalice and a paten. It's blue and it's made of clay. And so we use it during some of the special services, the smaller services that we have. And so whenever you see that, think of him and say a prayer of thanksgiving for him, if you can. I leave this to you to continue for me. And help his memory stay alive and keep that hope alive for his mother. So again, thank you for inviting me here as to be a part of your community and to minister alongside of you. Will you pray with me? Loving God, thank you for the ways that relationships help us to grow by challenging us and supporting us. God, today may the meditations of our hearts and the words of my mouth be acceptable in your sight. In your many names we pray, amen. So in this Easter season, we get to really think about what it means to be a disciple. We are reading through Acts a little bit, and we get to see the ways that the disciples did really well and ways that they faltered a little bit. But today on this Mother's Day, we have an example of Dorcas, who is an amazing disciple and is the only female disciple named in the New Testament. It's incredible, actually, that she even has a name, because most women in the Bible go unnamed. So not only is she named, but she is called disciple. I mean, that'll preach by itself. We can just sit down and have the rest of the service, because that is incredible. But I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her. So what we can pick up from the small text that was read so beautifully by us today, thank you, is that she was a seamstress. She made tunics and robes, and she did these things for the widows in her community. Now, for us, widows might be just a part of life. We know widows in our midst, right? But in that time, to be a widow was to be amongst the bottom of society. Women had no rights, and widows didn't have any place. They couldn't just go find a job. There were no social services to help them through a hard time. They just had to make it in whatever way they could. And so Dorcas, the fact that she is so beloved by the widows shows that she was indeed a part of that community. She went with them and journeyed with them, making clothes for them. And so when we think about just the way that she was, we can see already that there's something a little bit different about her, right? We don't know what her social status was, but the fact that she made clothes points to the idea that she must have had some wealth, because buying fabric is expensive, and being able to sew clothes together was a special skill that must have taken some sort of education. So we can surmise that this woman was a woman of some sort of privilege, that she had something that she could give to others, so she did that through being a seamstress. In this story, I have this kind of vision of all of the women coming to anoint this body who has poured out so much to them, and being so distraught they didn't know what to do. But they heard of this guy, Peter, and some of the stuff that he had done. They probably knew about Jesus, and they knew about the little girl that he saved by saying, "Daughter, get up," if you remember that from the Gospels. They probably also knew about Jesus, who resurrected his friend Lazarus from the dead. So these widows, upon the body of their friend, must have said, "We have to do whatever we can." So they convinced two men to go out and take a long journey. It would have taken about 3 hours on foot to get to where Peter was. So they go out and they convince Peter to come and save their friend. And he does. There's a resurrection hope in this story. So this woman was very important, and so today I'm going to offer that we can learn 3 things about active discipleship from her life. She was known indeed by her deeds. The text says she was devoted to good works and acts of charity. And the Greek for charity, and I'm graduating with a degree in Master's of Divinity, so I feel like I have to talk about the Greek a little bit. So the Greek for charity is agape, but y'all should know that, right? What does agape mean? Love, that's right. So these deeds and acts of love is what she is known for. So these 3 things, I think, are all coming from that place of love. And the first one is that discipleship is deeply relational. Somebody say relational. So Dorcas wasn't someone who just came and kind of gave stuff away. She didn't just go into her closet and say, "I don't want this anymore. Here you go, you can have it." She made clothes for people. She had to know their bodies. She had to measure them and see what color would look good on their skin tone, what fabrics would feel good on their bodies as they walked around the world. She didn't just go to a soup kitchen and offer soup by looking down and saying, "Here you go." She looked people in the eye and said, "What do you need? What kind of garment do you need?" So discipleship for her is deeply relational because she got to know the community. This last summer when I lived in San Francisco, we ministered to mostly people experiencing homelessness out on the streets. And so often we would talk to folks, and we would be the only person they talked to the whole day. People would go by them, they would ask for a small offering, and people would totally ignore them. And something that I learned from that community is that more than anything, more than a couple dollars a day, they want someone to recognize their presence and their humanity. And so when you see someone asking you for something, don't just blow by them. Be relational, be like Dorcas, and at least say hello. It's good to see you today. If you have time, ask them what they need. Get to know their story a little bit. So the first part of discipleship is what? Being relational. Very good. The second part of discipleship that we can learn from Dorcas is confidence. I think often we think of people who serve their communities as people who give everything and keep giving and giving and giving, much to their own detriment even. We highlight that kind of service, but that is not helpful service. We should not deplete ourselves until we have nothing left to give. That doesn't serve anyone. And in America, we have a history of the country doing that over and over and forcing people into labor, don't we? So that is not the kind of service and that kind of self-giving that Dorcas is inviting us to. Instead, Dorcas is confident. She knows who she is. She's confident in her faith and her ability to help with others. And so that's the second mark of discipleship, confidence. Disciples are confident. Somebody say confident. So in her confidence, she is able to pour out to others because she understands that her life is connected to those lives around her. One of my favorite quotes or poems from Marianne Williamson, I think, says this best. So I invite you to take a listen. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. This might sound familiar. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Well, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking. There's nothing lightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. We were born to make manifest that glory of God that lives within each of us. And it's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. It's a good word. So disciples are relational and confident. We know we have something to offer to the world. The third thing that I want you to think about this week as you go forth is that disciples use their assets. And this isn't like banking assets. I'm sure that's part of it. But these assets are more than banking. These assets are the things that we have. In our community, we have lots of assets, which we talk about each week, about showing up to people who are in hospice. That's an asset that we have. This building is an asset. We don't have pews. We have these chairs. We could do anything from having a dance party to an original play that we'll have next week. We can have so many things in this space. It's an asset of our space. In many ways, we all carry all sorts of assets. Maybe one day, the only asset you have is a smile. That's okay. Maybe sometimes your assets are tears that you share with other people. Maybe your asset is like Dorcas, and you have a special gift to offer the world, and you can make someone a garment. Maybe you're like Mama C, and you can make someone a meal. Maybe you're like Dante, and you can make a good Facebook post. There's lots of ways that we can have all sorts of assets in the world. One of my favorite stories of assets and thinking about community and relationality is Wangari Maathai. She's an African woman. She actually died a couple of years ago, but in 2004, she received a Nobel Peace Prize for her work in Africa. She comes from rural Kenya, and when she was growing up, the English colonial people came through, and they started to dismantle all of the regular civilization that was already there before they came. And one of the things that the colonists really were thinking about was these big trees. There's these huge fig trees. Have you ever seen a fig tree in the real world? They're amazing. They're majestic. And they don't just bear fruit, they do a lot of other things for the community too. So this rural Kenyan community would keep those trees there until they fell on their own. They saw them as being a part of the divine creation, as being a part of God's presence in the world. So when the colonizers saw the kind of reverence that these folks gave to the trees, they ordered them all to be cut down. And people wept. Like when our tree was cut down, we wept too, because we know what the tree signifies, what the tree has seen. But in this community, it was even more. Soon, the whole ground started to erode, and they had all of these horrible mudslides when it would rain. And the reason for that is because fig trees have a really big extended root structure. And so the fig trees were literally holding the ground together, protecting the community like God protects us. So Wangari Maathai, she saw this happen when she was growing up, and she dedicated herself to the planting of trees. In her lifetime, she planted over 52 million trees throughout Africa, mostly in Central and East Africa. And to this day, there's a project that's continuing to make a green belt across the whole continent of trees, and really looking at urban areas to make sure that urban areas have that same meeting of root structure around them. So part of this using our assets is really asking deep questions about what are the problems in our community and what is there to protect us, or what can we use in order to have benevolence for other people outside of our community or even within our community. So the 3 marks of discipleship according to Dorcas, what are they? 1, good. 2, good. 3. Nice, very good. You can write those down if you want. Or you can just take out the little card that was given to you when you first came in the room. So this card says, be kind. Everyone you meet carries a heavy burden. And I want to invite you to take out your wallet right now, too. It's not offering time. Take it out. I'm watching you. I can see you. Take it out. Take out your wallets. And now put that card right in the front part of your wallet. So every time you open your wallet, you see that card that says, be kind, everyone you meet carries a heavy burden. And if you didn't get one of those, the ushers are coming around right now to give them out to you. So you just raise your hand, and they will come to you. Thank you, ushers. So these cards, I want to tell you about where I got this card. Does that sound okay? So I was given this card in high school, so I've had it a long time. It looks a little bit different. And our leadership teacher gave it to us when we did this exercise. We had stayed at the school all night long. I know that sounds horrible to some people, doesn't it? We made cookies for every single person who came to school the next day. We made like 2,000 cookies. It was a big high school. It's a lot of cookies. So throughout the whole night, we did this exercise called boundary breaking. And our teacher led us into answering these short questions. So the first was like, what's your favorite movie? You know, what's your favorite childhood memory? Whatever, stuff like that. And then the last 2 questions were, what has been your best day? And what has been your most difficult? And we were high schoolers, but everybody had these stories that were just amazingly impactful to share. And so at the end of the exercise, she gave us these cards, and she invited us to put them in our wallets too, except for I think then it was a backpack, but you know. So she invited us to put them there and to keep them with us so that every time we walk around, we think about the stories that not only we carry, but also the stories of those that we meet. And so I offer this as a gift to you so that every time you open your wallet, you think about the things that you can do to be a presence of kindness. So maybe that can be spending your money in a way that doesn't go into the kind of corporate greed and capitalism of our world. Obviously, it's hard to escape sometimes, but you don't probably need everything you have. So maybe when you open your wallet and you see the invitation to be kind, you can think about how consumption does really make a big impact to our environment. Maybe you can think about what being kind looks like when you're checking out and your cashier is helping you get through the line. Maybe you can think about being kind when there's a mom who clearly has a lot of kids and is struggling to keep them all attentive in a grocery store. You know all the questions. I want that, I want that, I want that. You don't need all that. But they're going to keep asking. Maybe you can have a little bit more compassion next time you're at the store. So I invite you to think about what it looks to be kind, and challenge you to consider that being kind is a way that we can be and live into that resurrecting hope for others. So as we are formed as disciples, as we are relational, as we are confident, and as we use our assets, the thing that should come through all of that is our kindness. Amen.